Welcome to Starbound's second channel. My name is Systolic and I will be your narrator today. But before we get into today's story, please check down below to see if you are subscribed. It is 100% free, it just allows our stories to pop up more in your feed. Again, reset the simulation! Sergeant Lewis Cooper's voice echoed through the dingy, outdated control room of Earth Outpost 7 training facility. Through the scratched observation window, a half-dozen recruits exchanged weary glances as they climbed back into simulator pods for what had to be the 10th consecutive run. Sarge, we've been at this for 3 hours, Private Wells called out, fatigue evident in his voice. Lucius ignored the complaints as he worked the control panel. And we'll go another 3 if that's what it takes. Centauri Ravine scenario isn't just about surviving. You have to truly understand how terrain dictates your options. The holographic display flickered with static. Budget cuts meant maintenance was always behind, but Lucius could still track each trainee's position as their virtual mechs navigated the simulated canyon. 5 minutes in, and already Wells was making the same mistake. Wells, you're exposing your left flank again! Use the rock formations for cover. Think asymmetrically. The standard approach is the expected approach. Too late. The simulation registered a critical hit on Wells' mech. The young recruit's frustrated groan carried through the comm system. And that's why you're dead, Lucius said, not unkindly. Anyone want to explain what Wells did wrong? Silence filled the channel, the remaining trainees too focused on their own survival to risk distraction. He followed the manual, Lucius answered, watching as the next recruit fell into an ambush. Page 47, Section 3. When outgunned, establish distance and engage with ranged weapons. The trouble is, the enemies read the same manual. A recruit named Mina was the last one standing. Her simulator mech crouched behind a narrow outcropping, minimizing her profile, a tactic Lucius had demonstrated yesterday. Good, Mina. Now, what's your exit strategy? There isn't one, Sergeant, she replied, tension evident in her voice. Both passes are covered by enemy fire. Lucius smiled. So make one. After a moment's hesitation, Mina redirected her mech to fire at the canyon wall above the enemy position. The resulting avalanche wasn't enough to destroy the opposition, but it created the distraction needed for her to advance rather than retreat, closing to melee range where the enemy's superior firepower became a liability. Simulation complete. 1 survivor, the automated system announced. That, Lucius said to the group as they emerged from their pods, is why we run these scenarios. The manual gives you the foundation, but victory often requires you to tear up the blueprint. Checking the time, Lucius added, That's enough for today. Tomorrow we'll... The training room's doors hissed open, cutting Lucius off mid-sentence. A tall woman in a pristine Earth Defense Force uniform entered, flanked by 2 aides. Commander insignia gleamed on her collar, matching the hard glint in her eyes as she surveyed the shabby facility. Commander Juarez, Lucius acknowledged, straightening instinctively. Didn't know we were due for an inspection. We weren't, Juarez replied crisply. Dismiss your class. Sergeant Cooper, we need to talk. Something in her tone made Lucius's stomach tighten. Top brass didn't visit Outpost 7. This forgotten corner of the EDF training division where washouts taught potential future washouts on equipment 2 generations behind the front lines. Class dismissed, Lucius announced. Review today's simulation data. I expect improvement tomorrow. As the recruits filed out, Wells lingered at the door. Everything okay, Sarge? Peachy, Lucius assured him with a confidence that felt hollow. Just bureaucratic nonsense. Once alone with Juarez and her aides, Lucius gestured to the room's sole amenity, a dented coffee machine. Can I offer you something, Commander? The taste's awful, but the caffeine will sure keep you peppy. Juarez didn't smile. The Talshari Dominion has issued a challenge to Earth. Lucius blinked, processing this non-squinter. The Talshari, one of the most technologically advanced species in the sector, rarely engage directly with humanity, preferring to deal through intermediaries. What kind of challenge? A mechanical duel. 1 champion from each side, 3 rounds of combat in different environments. They're calling it a cultural exchange to demonstrate combat techniques. Lucius snorted. They won a galactic dick measuring contest to show how superior they are before trade negotiations. Precisely. Juarez nodded, seemingly unsurprised by Lucius's analysis. The outcome will set the tone for discussions about the Epsilon Belt mining rights, which, I don't need to tell you, are crucial for our rare earth element supplies. Sounds like a job for the 1st Combat Division, Lucius said, still not understanding why this conversation was happening in a rundown training facility. Major Ellington's got that new Valkyrie-class mech. Major Ellington collapsed during pre-mission briefing 12 hours ago. Juarez interrupted. Severe neurological symptoms consistent with toxin exposure, though nothing's been confirmed yet. A chill ran down Lucius's spine. The timing was too convenient to be coincidence. The backup pilot? On deep space patrol, too far to recall in time. Our 3rd choice is undergoing emergency surgery after a training accident. Juarez fixed Lucius with a penetrating stare. Which brings me to you. Me? Lucius laughed, the sound brittle and sharp. I'm a training sergeant. I haven't piloted a combat mech in... Hell, I've never piloted a real combat mech. Your simulation scores say otherwise. One of Juarez's aides handed her a tablet, which she passed to Lucius. Unconventional tactics, but consistently effective against superior opponents. You hold 17 of the top 20 scores of the advanced combat simulators. Lucius scanned the data, remembering the countless off hours spent in the simulators after the recruits had gone. Not out of dedication to the EDF, but because those virtual battles were the closest Lucius would ever get to piloting after the washout evaluation. These are simulators, Commander. The real thing is different. Oh, I am keenly aware, Juarez replied coldly. I'm also aware of why you were dismissed from the pilot program despite your aptitude. Exceptional instinct, catastrophic risk assessment. You disobeyed direct orders in your final evaluation. The memories surfaced unbidden. The simulated mission, the downed teammate, the choice between following protocol and attempting a dangerous rescue. Lucius had chosen the latter, resulting in a simulated catastrophic failure that had sealed the evaluation committee's decision. I made a judgment call. And it got your entire squad killed. Juarez finished. But that's not relevant now. What's relevant is that you're the only one with the skills we need who can be ready in time. Lucius handed back the tablet. You're desperate. Desperate enough to give a washout the chance to represent Earth? Juarez's smile was thin. Yes. What mech would I even pilot? The most advanced unit at this outpost is a training model that's been patched together so many times, the original parts are probably in a museum. That's precisely what you'll be piloting, Juarez confirmed. Old Bessie, as I believe you call it, the Telshari would see through any attempt to quickly transfer you to an unfamiliar machine. At least with Bessie, you have hands-on experience with every system. Lucius stared at her, waiting for the punchline. When none came, disbelief turned to anger. You're setting me up to fail. I'm setting you up to participate, Juarez corrected. Nobody expects you to win, Sergeant. We just need you to not embarrass us completely. Show enough skill to maintain dignity in defeat, and maybe, just maybe, the Telshari won't walk all over us in negotiations. The dismissal in her voice struck deeper than any reprimand. Lucius had spent years being considered not quite good enough. Now Earth needed a pilot, and they still considered Lucius inadequate. Just good enough to lose respectably. And if I refuse? You won't, Juarez said with such unsettling certainty. Because despite that assessment failure, you never backed down from a challenge. And because... She paused, her expression softening marginally. We've already accepted on your behalf. Transport leaves at 600 tomorrow. My aides will provide you the briefing materials. With that, Juarez turned to leave, and stopped at the door. For what it's worth, Cooper, I reviewed your washout case. In a real combat situation, I might have made the same call you did. And they left. Lucius stood alone in the silent training room, staring at the battered simulators. A notification pinged on the personal tablet. The official mission parameters. Talshari technical specifications, diplomatic protocols. They think this is training? Lucius muttered, scrolling through the documents. A glorified exhibition match while they decide our economic future? The anger that has been simmering since Juarez's arrival suddenly crystallized into resolve. If Earth expected a dignified defeat, fine. But Lucius Cooper had never been good at meeting expectations. Word spread quickly through Outpost 7's small complement of staff and recruits. By evening, Lucius was surrounded by volunteers ready to help prepare Old Bessie for combat against the state-of-the-art Talshari war machine. The Talshari Mark 7 has a triple redundant targeting systems, Wells pointed out, examining the technical specifications Lucius had been given. Bessie's got, well, technically one, but it's actually 3 different systems jury-rigged together, which means 3 different targeting methodologies, Lucius countered, hands deep in Bessie's exposed circuitry. If we can get them to harmonize instead of prioritizing, we might achieve better predictive tracking than their standardized system. Mina, who had proven herself adept at electronic systems, looked skeptical. That's like saying 3 broken clocks might tell time better than 1 perfect one. No, Lucius grinned, pulling out a scorched circuit board. It's like saying 3 different perspectives might see things a rigid system would miss. The Talshari rely on technical superiority, which means they have blind spots where they don't expect weakness. Throughout the night, they worked to modify Old Bessie. Nothing that would register as unauthorized on the official inspection, just adjustments to existing systems, optimizing based on Lucius's extensive knowledge of mech weak points gained from years of losing in simulations. Every defeat had taught lessons about vulnerability, exploitation, and recovery. Near midnight, most of the volunteers had succumbed to exhaustion. Lucius remained in the maintenance bay, recalibrating Bessie's hydraulic response systems, a critical weakness in most EDF mechs that the Talshari would undoubtedly notice. Thought I'd find you here, Sarge. Lucius glanced up to see Wells entering the bay with 2 steaming cups. He handed one over, and Lucius recognized the sharp, acrid smell of the notorious Outpost 7 coffee. Shouldn't you be sleeping? Transport leaves in 6 hours. Wells shrugged. Figured you could use the help, and it's kind of personal for me. How so? My brother was stationed on Epsilon 4, one of the colonies affected by whatever mining rights get negotiated. Wells adjusted a power coupling with practiced ease. This isn't just politics for some of us. The simple statement shifted something in Lucius's perspective. Until now, this mission had felt like a personal challenge, a challenge to prove the washout committee wrong, or at least avoid the humiliation of an embarrassing defeat. But Wells' words were a reminder that real life depended on these negotiations. Families, futures. Tell me about your brother, Lucius said, accepting a tool Wells offered without needing to ask for it. He's security detail for the research outpost. Not military, civilian contractor. Pays better, he says, but less protection if things go south. Wells' voice held an edge of worry. If Talshari get exclusive mining rights, the human settlements could be displaced or left vulnerable to whatever corpos move in. Lucius nodded, making a minor adjustment to Bessie's knee actuator. Then we better make sure they don't completely steamroll these negotiations. They worked in companionable silence for another hour before Wells spoke again. Why did you stay here, Sarge? After washing out of the pilot program. I mean, could have gone to private sector, made real credits instead of military scrap. The question caught Lucius off guard. It wasn't something anyone at Outpost 7 typically asked. Most were either passing through on their way to better assignments, or had their own reasons for ending up in this backwater. Wasn't ready to quit, Lucius finally admitted. Thought maybe if I had trained enough winners, they'd reconsider my case. A rueful laugh escaped. Stupid. Not stupid, Wells said, his dark eyes serious. Stubborn. There are worse qualities in a pilot. Lucius smiled, feeling an unexpected surge of gratitude for this earnest young recruit who'd chosen to spend his night elbow-deep in mech hydraulics on the eve of what would likely be a losing battle. Get some rest, Wells. That's an order. I need at least one person alert enough tomorrow to remind me which end of the mech is which. After Wells left, Lucius climbed into Bessie's cockpit, a space so familiar that every dent and scratch told a story. The neural interface helmet hung from its hook, the inside worn smooth from years of use. Lucius ran fingers along its edge, remembering the first time it had connected to the mech systems, how it had felt like an extension of himself rather than just a machine. "Just you and me, old girl," Lucius murmured. "Time to show him what junkyard dogs can do." The neutral Talshari space station loomed in the viewport, its architecture an elegant fusion of organic curves and precise geometric patterns. Lucius stood on the transport ship's observation deck, watching as they approached the docking array. "Remember the protocols," Juarez said, appearing at Lucius's side. "The Talshari value precision and hierarchy, address Amanda Crawthall as honored adversary in formal settings, and defer to his ceremonial privileges as the representative of the hosting power." "So I'm supposed to play the respectful underling while he showboats?" Lucius asked, not bothering to hide the distaste. "You're supposed to represent Earth with dignity," Juarez corrected sharply. "The diplomatic team will handle the negotiations. Your job is the combat exhibition. Nothing more, nothing less." As soon as they docked, Lucius was separated from the diplomatic conjugant while they attended formal receptions and preliminary meetings. Lucius was escorted to the pilot's quarters, a sparse but immaculately clean room adjacent to the maintenance bay where Bessie was being housed. "The medication chamber is through there," the Talshari attendant explained, gesturing to a side door with smooth efficiency. "The preparation ceremonies begin at 0800 station time. The honored Crawthall suggests you use the intervening period for a spiritual alignment." Lucius thanked the attendant and waited until the door closed before muttering, "Spiritual alignment? I'd rather check on my mech." Instead of meditating, Lucius used the station's limited civilian access to study the layout. On the third evening cycle, while the diplomats attended yet another formal function, Lucius slipped away to examine the combat arena where the duels would take place. The massive, circular chamber was impressive, at least 5 times larger than Outpost 7's training hall, with configurable elements to simulate the different environments for each round. Technicians moved through the space, making final adjustments to holographic projectors and physical barriers. Lucius moved quietly along the observer's walkway, trying to memorize the layout. A side door opened into what appeared to be the Talshari preparation area. Curiosity overcoming caution, Lucius slipped inside. The sight that greeted him took his breath away. Standing in a maintenance cradle was the most advanced mech Lucius had ever seen, the Talshari war machine, Bleeding Haven. Unlike the boxy utilitarian design of Earth mechs, this creation seemed almost alive. Its silver-blue surface reflecting the light in subtle patterns that shifted as if it was breathing. Every line spoke of precision, speed, and devastating power. "Impressive, isn't it?" Lucius froze at the voice behind him. Turning slowly, he found himself facing a tall, imposing figure. The Talshari's scaled skin held an iridescent blue-green sheen that complemented his formal military attire. Dark, lidded eyes, common to his species, assessed Lucius with evident curiosity. "I was, Lucius began, searching for an explanation that wouldn't sound like espionage. "Examining your opponent," the Talshari finished, moving past Lucius to stand before the mech. "A natural instinct. Our technician specialists do the same with your machine. You're one of the human maintenance crew?" he continued, apparently mistaking Lucius for a technician due to the casual attire. For a split second, Lucius considered correcting him, then recognized the opportunity. "Yes, just making sure everything's up to specification." The Talshari nodded, a gesture Lucius knew they had adopted for interspecies communication. "The Bleeding Haven represents our finest military engineering. Triple redundant targeting systems, phase shift armor capable of adapting to various attack profiles, and reaction times 300% faster than your most advanced models." "Must be a nightmare to maintain," Lucius commented, circling the mech while noting critical juncture points, actuator configurations, and what appeared to be cooling vents near the power core. All those complex systems interacting. "On the contrary," the Talshari replied, pride evident in his voice. "The systems are designed for perfect harmony. When one element functions at peak efficiency, it elevates all others, unlike your approach to technology." He gestured towards a nearby monitor displaying Bessie in her maintenance cradle, looking painfully outdated next to the Talshari marvel. Lucius felt a surge of defensiveness. Sometimes the old ways have advantages. Fewer interdependencies means fewer cascading failures. The Talshari made a sound that might have been amusement, a diplomatic perspective on obsolescence. He turned to face Lucius directly. I am Krafal, Supreme Combat Specialist of the Talshari Dominion. I will pilot Bleeding Haven in tomorrow's exhibition. Lucius's stomach dropped. This wasn't just any Talshari officer. This was the champion himself, the opponent Lucius would face in less than 12 hours. And he clearly had no idea who Lucius was. I've heard much about your pilot, Cathral continued. Major Ellington's record is impressive for a human. Tell me, is he prepared for our encounter? Lucius hesitated, then decided to maintain the deception for a little longer. I'm sure our representative will offer a worthy challenge. I should hope so, Crathal said, his eyes narrowing slightly. This exhibition is meant to demonstrate the pinnacle of our respective combat philosophies. To send anything less than your finest would be unfortunate. The implied threat hung in the air between them. Before Lucius could respond, the door opened and a Talshari official entered. Supreme Combat Specialist Crathal, she said with formal deference. Your presence is requested at the diplomatic reception. Crathal inclined his head. Of course. To Lucius, he added, Perhaps I will see you tomorrow, technician. From a distance, naturally. After they departed, Lucius exhaled slowly, reeling just how much information Crathal had unwittingly provided. His pride in his mech had led him to highlight its strengths, and by extension, hint at potential vulnerabilities. Perfect harmony, huh? Lucius murmured, taking one last look at Bleeding Haven. Let's see how you handle a little chaos, then. The formal introduction ceremony the next morning was Lucius's personal definition of hell. Dressed in an uncomfy, stiff, EDF formal uniform, Lucius stood at attention while diplomats from both sides made flowery speeches about cultural exchange and mutual respect. And now, announced the human ambassador, I present Earth's champion for this exhibition of combat techniques, Sergeant Lewis Cooper. A murmur ran through the assembled dignitaries. Lucius could tell the confusion on the human faces, the raised eyebrows among the Talshari. This was not the name they had expected to hear. Across the ceremonial space, Crothal's eyes widened in unmistakable recognition, then narrowed into fury. The Talshari captain stepped forward, his voice carrying clearly. There must be some mistake. Where is Major Ellington, Earth's designated champion? Commander Juarez smoothly intervened. Major Ellington was unfortunately taken ill. Sergeant Cooper has been selected as Earth's representative for the exhibition. Crothal's scales darkened, a sign of anger Lucius recalled from the briefing materials. The technician, he hissed, pointing at Lucius. This is who Earth sends to face me! The diplomatic temperature in the room plummeted. Lucius could see the Earth negotiators exchanging alarmed glances as Crathal continued. This is an insult to Talshari's dominion! They might as well send a janitor with a mop! Do humans hold our combat traditions in such contempt? Before Juarez or the ambassador could respond, Lucius stepped forward, meeting Crathal's glare directly. With respect, honoured adversary, Lucius said, using the formal address with just enough emphasis to border on mockery. Perhaps you should reserve judgment until after our contest. After all, Lucius smiled, remembering their previous conversation. When one system functions at peak efficiency, it elevates all others. Crathal's scales rippled with suppressed emotion as he recognized his own words. For a moment, Lucius thought he might refuse to participate, which would be a diplomatic disaster, but would spare the humiliation of an inevitable defeat. Instead, Crathal drew himself to his full impressive height. Very well, human. I accept your substitution. But understand this. I will show you no mercy in our combat. You have chosen to stand before the Bleeding Haven, prepared to be swept aside. Maybe that's all it will take, Lucius replied, maintaining eye contact despite the intimidating height difference. The tension broke only when the ceremony moderator hurriedly announced the commencement of the first round, scheduled for 2 hours hence. As the gathering dispersed, Juarez gripped Lucius' arm with surprising strength.
"What the hell was that?"
she demanded in a harsh whisper. "Diplomatic relations," Lucius answered innocently. Juarez's expression could have melted steel.
"The goal was to minimize the insult of sending a substitute, not to antagonize their champion personally."
"He started it," Lucius said, then immediately regretted the childish response. "Look, Commander, we both know I'm expected to lose, but I'm not going to bow and scrape while doing it. If I'm Earth's champion, even the discount version, I'm going to act like one." Juarez studied Lucius's face for a long moment, then released her grip.
"Just don't make this worse than it already is,"
she said, finally.
"The stakes are too high for your personal vendetta against whatever this is."
"It's not a vendetta," Lucius insisted. "It's about respect. Theirs for us, and ours for ourselves." Juarez didn't look convinced, but there was no time for further discussion. The first round was approaching, and Lucius needed to prepare. The urban combat simulation for round 1 transformed the arena into a maze of buildings, bridges, and narrow passages. Holographic projectors combined with physical structures to create a convincing cityscape, complete with variable lighting conditions to simulate shadows and blind spots. Inside Bessie's cockpit, Lucius ran through the final system checks. The neural interface hummed to life, connecting pilot to machine with familiar efficiency. Despite the outdated technology, the sensation of becoming one with the mech still gave Lucius a thrill that no simulator could match. "Pilot Cooper, this is Control," a voice announced through the comm system. "Commence entry when ready." Lucius took a deep breath, then guided Bessie through the entry portal into the arena. The mech moved with the slight uneven gait that had given it its nickname, a quirk in the left leg actuator that no amount of maintenance had ever fully corrected. Rather than try to hide it, Lucius had learned to integrate the irregular rhythm to throw off opponents' timing predictions. Across the arena, Bleeding Haven entered with fluid grace that made Bessie look like a stuttering reconstruction in comparison. The Talshari mech gleamed under the arena's lights, its movements precise and measured. "Combat protocols engaged," announced the arena AI. "Round 1 commences in 3, 2, 1. A tone sounded, and Bleeding Haven immediately launched into action, moving with startling speed towards what appeared to be an advantageous firing position. Lucius had anticipated this. The Talshari combat doctrine emphasized securing positional dominance early. Instead of attempting to match this conventional approach, Lucius sent Bessie lurching down a narrow side passage, deliberately scraping against the walls to show a shower of sparks and debris. The noise and visual distraction served its purpose. Bleeding Haven's targeting systems locked onto the commotion, expecting Lucius to emerge from the other end of the passage. But Lucius had already directed Bessie to scale the exterior of an adjacent structure, using the mech's powerful arms to climb rather than walk. From this elevated position, Lucius had a clear shot at Bleeding Haven's temporarily exposed sensor array. Bessie's patchwork targeting systems, a hybrid of 3 different generations of technology, struggling to harmonize, but Lucius had spent hundreds of hours compensating for its quirks. The shot connected, not with enough force to cause serious damage, but sufficient to register impact. A collective gasp rose from the observation gallery. "First contact advantage, Earth," the arena AI announced dispassionately. Lucius could almost feel Crethal's surprise and fury through the way Bleeding Haven pivoted, its movements suddenly less measured and more aggressive. The next few minutes became a chess match of movements, with Lucius refusing to engage according to standard combat patterns. Bessie vaulted over obstacles instead of going around them, deliberately exposing non-critical systems as bait, and used the urban environment as an active tool, dislodging debris, creating dust clouds, generating false readings. But it wasn't enough for victory. Bleeding Haven's superior systems eventually adapted to Lucius's unconventional approach, and its overwhelming technological advantage began to tell. A precisely calculated shot disabled Bessie's primary mobility actuator, leaving the Earth's mech partially paralyzed. "Function impairment exceeds threshold. Round 1 victory, Talshari," the AI declared. Lucius sat back in the cockpit, breathing heavily. The neural interface disconnected always left a lingering disorientation. The sensation of being suddenly confined to one's body after experiencing the extended awareness of the mech. Despite the defeat,
Lucius felt a surge of satisfaction. Bessie had exceeded every expectation, landing multiple scoring hits against a vastly superior opponent. More importantly, the round had lasted nearly 30 minutes, 3 times longer than the diplomatic corps had predicted. In the maintenance bay afterwards, Lucius personally directed the repair efforts despite the presence of EDF technicians. This habit, born from years at a facility too understaffed to separate pilot and maintenance duties, had become ritual. Understanding Bessie's systems intimately had saved Lucius's life more than once in the arena.
Coolant pressure is still fluctuating,
Lucius muttered, adjusting a valve deep within Bessie's torso section.
We need to stabilize it before round 2 and we'll overheat in the first 5 minutes.
Sergeant Cooper. The voice startled Lewis, who hadn't heard anyone approach. Sliding out from under the access panel, Lucius found Crothall standing at a formal distance, his posture rigid.
Honored adversary,
Lucius acknowledged, wiping grime from hands onto an already filthy uniform.
Come to expect your victim up close?
Crothall's scale shifted colour slightly. Annoyance, perhaps, or some other emotion Lucius couldn't interpret.
I came to understand how a training mech piloted by a non-champion managed to land 3 scoring hits against Bleeding Haven.
Lucius stood, closing Bessie's access panel.
Maybe I'm just that good.
You're not, Crothall replied bluntly.
Your technique is unrefined, your timing erratic, and your tactical approach borders on insanity. Yet,
he paused, his eyes studying Lucius with unsettling intensity.
You anticipated my movements with uncomfortable accuracy.
I've lost thousands of simulated battles, Lucius said, meeting his gaze. Turns out losing teaches you more about mech vulnerabilities than winning ever could. Every defeat is a blueprint. The concept seemed to genuinely puzzle Crothall.
You study failure?
I study why systems fail, how they fail, and what precipitates failure, Lucius corrected. Your Bleeding Haven is a masterpiece of engineering, and I will be the first to admit that. But it's built on assumptions about optimal combat approaches. When faced with suboptimal, unexpected tactics, those assumptions become vulnerabilities. Crothall was silent for a long time, his alien features difficult to read.
An interesting perspective, he finally said. The second round takes place in zero-gravity conditions. Your unconventional approach will find less purchase there.
We'll see, Lucius replied, unable to resist adding, by the way, your port-side thermal dispersion array is operating at approximately 87% efficiency. Might want to have your technicians look at that before it becomes a problem. The Talshari's champion's scales darkened again, but there was something different in his eyes. A reassessment, perhaps. Without another word, he turned and left the maintenance bay, his formal robes billowing behind him. One of the EDF technicians whistled low.
You've got guts, Sarge, talking to him like that.
Lucius shrugged, already focusing back on Bessie's systems. He's just a pilot, same as me. But the words rang hollow even as they were spoken. Crothall was a supreme combat specialist with decades of experience, and the finest technology the Talshari could produce. Lucius was a washout flying a training mech held together with what amounts to thoughts and prayers. Yet somehow, against all logic, Lucius made him nervous. Commander Juarez found Lucius an hour before the second round was scheduled to begin.
We need to talk,
she said without preamble.
There's been a development.
Lucius followed her to a secure communication room, where a medical officer waited on the view screen, his expression grave.
Sergeant Cooper, I'm Dr. Patel from EDF Medical Command. I've been treating Major Ellington.
How is he? Lucius asked, genuinely concerned. Whatever competition existed between pilots, no one wished illness on a colleague.
Stable, but still serious,
Patel replied.
We've identified the cause of his collapse. Synthetic neurotoxin, specifically designed to target the neural pathways enhanced by pilot interfaces.
Juarez's expression hardened.
It wasn't an accident or natural illness. Someone poisoned our champion, deliberately.
The implications hung heavy in the air. Sabotage on this level, targeting a specific pilot before an international exhibition, suggested something far beyond competitive advantage.
Has anyone else been affected?
Lucius asked.
No confirmed cases,
Patel said,
but we've placed all active-duty neural interface pilots on precautionary protocols. The toxin appears to have been in his personal supplement regimen. Targeted, not widespread.
Lucius processed this information. You think the Telshari are behind it? We don't know, Juarez admitted. It could be the Telshari, or a third party interested in disrupting relations between our species. She fixed Lucius with a stern gaze. This information is classified. I'm telling you because you need to be on alert. If someone went to these lengths once, they might try it again. Lucius finished. But why tell me now, right before round 2? It's not exactly a confidence booster. Because your performance yesterday exceeded all projections, Juarez said, surprising Lucius with what almost sounded like approval. You turned what should have been a diplomatic embarrassment into a demonstration of human resourcefulness. The negotiation team reports a subtle but significant shift in the Telshari's approach. They're less dismissive, more willing to consider compromise. Lucius hadn't expected this. The mission parameters had been clear. Participate with dignity, lose respectably. That the exhibition might actually influence the negotiations positively had seemed impossible. So what do you want me to do differently? Nothing, Juarez replied. Continue as you have been, but be careful, Cooper. Watch your back. Don't take any unnecessary risks. After Juarez left, Lucius stood alone in the communication room, mind racing. The poisoning of Major Ellington had changed the context of the entire exhibition. This wasn't just sport or diplomacy. Someone wanted to ensure a specific outcome badly enough to commit what had amounted to an act of war. The question was, who benefited from Earth being embarrassed in front of the Telshari? The zero-G environment of Round 2 presented an entirely different challenge. The arena had been transformed into a simulated asteroid field with various sized rocks floating in three-dimensional space. Both mechs were equipped with maneuvering thrusters for navigation, but all normal reference points of up and down were deliberately absent. Lucius had anticipated that Bleeding Haven would excel here. The Telshari's mech's precision and balanced design were perfect for zero-G operations, while Bessie's irregular movements and jury-rig systems seemed ill-suited for the environment. What Lucius hadn't shared with anyone was that the countless hours in the simulator had included extensive zero-G combat training. Not because it was part of Outpost 7's curriculum, but because Lucius had created custom programs to address personal weaknesses. The washout evaluation had specifically cited suboptimal spatial awareness in non-standard gravitational conditions. As the round began, Krathal immediately demonstrated his expertise, guiding Bleeding Haven through a series of fluid maneuvers that positioned him with clear firing lines while maximizing available cover. It was textbook perfect execution. Lucius, however, did something unexpected. Rather than attempting to match Krathal's graceful approach, Bessie drifted apparently out of control, spinning slowly as if its thrusters were malfunctioning. Several of the Earth diplomatic team visibly winced at what appeared to be either a technical failure or pilot disorientation. Bleeding Haven closed in for what should have been an easy victory, only to discover that Bessie's erratic movements were deliberate. Lucius used precisely timed thruster bursts to convert the spin into sudden directional changes that defied tracking algorithms. What followed was less a traditional mech duel and more a guerrilla campaign in 3 dimensions. Lucius used the floating debris not just as shields, but as weapons, moving behind larger asteroids only to suddenly kick off them, sending both Bessie and the asteroid in opposite directions, the latter often directly towards Bleeding Haven. Krathal adapted quickly, but his training emphasized precision and efficiency, approaches that assumed a certain rationality from opponents. Lucius's seemingly chaotic method forced him into a reactive stance rather than the proactive one he preferred. The decisive movement came when both mechs sustained critical damage simultaneously. Bleeding Haven's primary power core took a direct hit from a piece of debris Lucius had deliberately directed towards it, while Bessie's already compromised mobility system finally failed completely after an especially risky maneuver.
Both units have sustained functional impairment exceeding threshold,
the arena AI announced.
Round 2 results, draw.
In the observation gallery, the diplomats from both sides murmured in surprise. A draw had not been considered a possible outcome by either side's analysis. Lucius exited Bessie's cockpit to find the maintenance bay abuzz with activity. EDF technicians frantically worked alongside their Telshari counterparts in an unusual display of cooperation. both sides facing the challenge of preparing severely damaged mechs for a final round in less than 24 hours. As Lucius conducted a preliminary damage assessment, a familiar figure appeared. "Your tactics are deranged," Krathal stated without preamble. "No Talshari would ever consider such approaches." "That's kind of the point," Lucius replied, examining a particularly worrisome crack in Bessie's frame. "If I fight the way you do, I lose. So I don't." Krathal's scale shifted through several colours before settling. "Your primary cyclic disruptor is beyond repair," he observed, pointing to a component Lucius had been concerned about. "Our technicians have a compatible replacement that could be modified for your system's architecture." The offer caught Lucius completely off guard. "Why would you help me repair my mech?" "Because a victory over a crippled opponent brings no honour," Krathal replied immediately. Then, after a moment's hesitation, added more quietly, "And because I find myself curious what other surprises you might present in our final encounter." Lucius studied him, searching for deception and finding none obvious in his alien features. "Your port thruster array sustained micro-fractures from the debris' impact," Lucius offered in return. "They won't show up on standard diagnosis, but they'll fail catastrophically under combat stress." For a moment, they stood in silence. Two warriors who had expected to despise each other now engaged in an unexpected exchange of knowledge. "The final environment is volcanic terrain," Krathal finally said. "High ambient temperatures, unstable surfaces, toxic atmospheric conditions." "Sounds like a typical Tuesday at Outpost 7, Lucius quipped, earning what might have been the Talshari equivalent of a puzzled smile. "Until tomorrow, Sergeant Cooper." Krathal made a formal gesture that Lucius recognized as one of martial respect, acknowledgement between worthy opponents. "May your repairs be successful." As he walked away, Lucius felt a strange mix of emotions. The Talshari champion had gone from dismissive contempt to genuine respect in the span of 2 encounters. It was a microcosm of what these exhibitions were supposed to achieve: mutual understanding through shared experience. The thought was interrupted by an EDF technician calling Lucius. "Sergeant, we've got a problem with the neural interface calibration. The diagnostic is showing some kind of external signal interference." Lucius frowned. After the news about Major Ellington's poisoning, any anomaly raised immediate concerns. "Show me." The diagnostic display confirmed the technician's report. An unknown signal was attempting to integrate with Bessie's neural interface systems. It wasn't strong enough to override the controls, but its presence alone was disturbing. Rather than reporting through official channels, which might trigger a diplomatic incident if accusations were made prematurely, Lucius made a decision. Using the secure comm terminal, a direct message was sent to Krathal's preparation arena. "Anomalous signal detected in neural interface. Possible external interference. Recommend checking Bleeding Haven for similar intrusion." The response came less than 5 minutes later. "Confirmed. Investigating source." Lucius stared at the message, mind racing. If both mechs were being targeted by the same external influence, this went beyond competition between Earth and the Talshari. Someone was attempting to affect the outcome, or perhaps create an incident during the final round. As if confirming these suspicions, the station's communication system suddenly crackled with static. The lights flickered momentarily before stabilizing. "Attention all personnel," a voice announced over the general channel. "We are experiencing temporary power fluctuations due to routine maintenance. There is no cause for concern." But the timing was too convenient. The explanation too neat. Lucius exchanged glances with the nearby technicians, seeing the same skepticism reflected in their expressions. "Keep working on repairs," Lucius ordered, "but be alert for anything unusual, and run continuous diagnostics on the neural interface." Something was happening on this station, something beyond a simple exhibition match between potential allies, and Lucius had a growing suspicion that the final round tomorrow would be about much more than determining a victor between Earth and the Talshari. The volcanic environment was the final round, transforming the arena into a hellscape of glowing magma channels, steam vents, and unstable rock formations. The temperature inside Bessie's cockpit rose steadily despite the cooling systems working at maximum capacity, a condition Lucius knew would affect both mechs. "Final system check complete," Lucius reported to Control. "Bessie is operational." The response came not from the arena AI, but from Commander Juarez. "Cooper, We've detected unusual activity in the station's primary systems. Security teams are investigating, but we have no concrete evidence yet. The diplomatic corps have decided the exhibition should proceed as scheduled to avoid raising suspicion.
Understood, Lucius replied, checking the neural interface one last time. The anomalous signal detected yesterday had vanished during the night, which was somehow more concerning than if it had persisted. Any word from the Talshari side?
Nothing official,
Juarez said carefully.
but their technicians seem on edge.
Proceed with caution, Cooper. Before Lucius could respond, a private communication channel activated, one that shouldn't have been possible according to exhibition protocols.
Sergeant Cooper,
Crathal's voice came through with perfect clarity.
I have established this secure channel outside the arena monitoring systems.
That's against the rules, isn't it? Lucius asked, though not particularly concerned about protocol at this point.
As in your mech's non-standard power distribution system?
Crathal countered.
But this is irrelevant now. My security team identified the source of the signal interface. It originated within the station's central data core, but they were locked out before they could isolate it completely.
Lucius processed this information while guiding Bessie towards the arena entrance. So we have an unknown actor with access to station systems and the ability to potentially interface with our mechs. Any idea what they want?
Our analysis have 3 theories, Crathal replied. Industrial espionage aiming to steal combat technology, political sabotage to disrupt Earth-Talshari relations, or,
Lucius prompted when he fell silent.
Or a third most sinister scenario.
Crathal finished.
The arena monitoring will resume once we enter the combat zone. I suggest we maintain awareness of any anomalies and potentially cooperate if necessary.
The suggestion of cooperation from the proud Talshari champion spoke volumes about his level of concern. Agreed, Lucius said. Let's give them a good show in the meantime. The final round began with the expected formality, both mechs taking the initial positions at the opposite ends of the volcanic field. Bleeding Haven moved with its characteristic grace, while Bessie adopted a lower stance to maintain stability on the uneven terrain. The first exchange went according to conventional combat doctrine, ranging shots to test defenses, tactical repositioning, environmental assessment. To the observers, it would appear as a natural continuation of the previous rounds. Through the private channel, Crathal's voice came through tense but controlled.
My security team reports the surveillance system have been compromised. Whatever we face may be watching through the arena sensors.
Lucius was about to respond when Bessie's warning system suddenly blared. The volcanic field beneath the mech shifted unnaturally, and a gout of superheated steam erupted directly in its path. Across the arena, Bleeding Haven faced similar unexpected environmental attacks. The pattern was too coordinated to be coincidental. Someone, or something, was actively using the arena itself against both combatants.
Cooper!
Juarez's voice cut through on the official channel.
We've lost control of the arena systems. The safety protocols have been overridden.
Yeah, figured! Lucius replied, his voice straining as he narrowly avoided a collapsing rock formation. Any idea who's responsible?
Station security has detected an automated system activate in the asteroid's core. Some kind of ancient defense mechanism that predates the station's construction. It's interpreting your combat as a threat and responding.
Crathal's voice returned on the private channel.
My team confirms. This asteroid housed an automatic defense outpost centuries ago, thought to be decommissioned when the station was built. Our combat activities appear to have triggered its remnant systems.
As if to confirm this assessment, the arena's outer doors sealed shut with a decisive clang. The observers in the gallery were abruptly evacuated as security barriers deployed.
The system is scanning both mechs,
Crathal reported, his tone sharp with alarm.
It appears to be attempting to establish control parameters.
Lucius felt it through Bessie's neural interface, a foreign presence pushing against the connection, trying to insert itself between pilot and machine. Years of simulator training had developed Lucius's mental discipline, making it possible to resist the intrusion, but it was like holding back a flood with bare hands.
This is no longer an exhibition,
Crathal declared.
We face a common enemy. The defense system is attempting to assimilate our mechs to respond to what it perceives as an invasion.
Through the observation windows, Lucius could see technicians and security personnel working frantically at control panels. Whatever was happening, the station's normal systems were proving inadequate to counter it. A decision point crystallized in Lucius's mind. This was no longer about winning a competition or proving personal worth. Lives were at stake. Everyone on this station, potentially the diplomatic future between Earth and the Talshari,
maybe even Wells' brother on that distant colony. "I'm going to find the source," Lucius announced, directing Bessie towards the center of the arena where a section of the floor had begun to reconfigure, revealing machinery that clearly didn't belong to the exhibition systems.
"What are you doing?"
Juarez demanded over the comm.
"We need you to retreat to the maintenance bay. The engineers think they can establish a quarantine field."
"No time," Lucius cut her off. "That defense system is working its way into the station's life support. We need to shut it down, now." Across the arena, Bleeding Haven stood motionless, caught in what appeared to be an internal struggle as Crathal fought the foreign controller attempting to override his connection. "Crathal! I need covering fire on the central node. Can you give me that?" For several agonizing seconds, there was no response. Then, Bleeding Haven's weapon systems activated, directing precisely calibrated blasts at the emergency defense system structure. The coordination wasn't perfect. Lucius could tell Crathal was fighting for every moment of control, but it was enough to create an opening. Bessie surged forward, moving with purpose towards the heart of the disturbance, the defense system, now partially exposed, revealing itself as a massive, spider-like construction assembling itself from the arena's infrastructure. Ancient technology, melded with the station's modern systems in a grotesque hybrid that continued to grow even as they watched.
"Cooper,
Crathal's strained voice came through.
my analysis suggests the central processing node is beneath the primary articulation point. If you can..."
His voice cut off as Bleeding Haven suddenly jerked, systems momentarily overridden. Lucius understood. The defense system had a vulnerable point, but reaching it meant getting dangerously close to its mechanical appendages. Appendages now clearly designed to capture and dismantle perceived threats. What followed was the most intense piloting challenge of Lucius's life. Guiding Bessie through the labyrinth of thrashing mechanical limbs required every ounce of skill and instinct development through years of simulation losses. Each near-miss lessons applied in real time, each successful evasion built on patterns recognized from past failures.
"The station's life support is being redirected,"
Juarez reported, her voice tight with controlled panic.
"Oxygen levels are dropping in residential sections. Whatever you're doing, Cooper, do it faster!"
Lucius had nearly reached the core when disaster struck. One of the defense system's limbs caught Bessie's already damaged leg, immobilizing the mech. Warning indicators flashed across the neural interface as critical systems began to fail under the strain. In that moment, Lucius saw only one option. It was reckless, potentially suicidal, and completely against protocol. Exactly the kind of decision that had resulted in washout from the pilot program years ago. "Initiating core overload," Lucius announced, bypassing safety protocols to access Bessie's power regulator systems.
"Cooper, no!"
Juarez's voice spiked with alarm.
"The feedback through the neural interface could cause permanent brain damage!"
Lucius ignored the warning, focusing on channeling the building energy surge towards Bessie's contact point with the defense system. The cockpit temperature skyrocketed as safety systems failed, and the neural interface began to burn with feedback that felt like fire along every nerve ending in his body. Just as the pain reached unbearable levels, Bleeding Haven appeared beside Bessie, extending its advanced shield technology to create a protective barrier around both mechs. The unexpected support allowed Lucius to complete the overload sequence before the neural interface could cause irreparable damage. The resulting energy discharge surged through the defense system's appendage and into its core, creating a cascading failure that spread throughout its structure. The massive structure convulsed, its hold on Bessie releasing as it struggled to maintain integrity. "Now!" Lucius called to Crathal. "Hit that fucker with everything you've got!" Bleeding Haven's primary weapon systems unleashed their full power on the destabilized core, the precise Talshari engineering delivering the coup de grace to the ancient defense system. The construct collapsed in on itself, its connection to the station's system severing one by one. In the aftermath, both mechs stood side by side amid the smoking ruins of the defense system. Bessie was barely operational, its frame so severely damaged that Lucius wasn't sure it would ever be combat ready again. Bleeding Haven had fared better, but showed clear signs of the battle in its scorched armor and staggered movements. The neural interface shut down left Lucius disorientated and in pain. Climbing out of Bessie's cockpit required every bit of remaining strength. Through blurred vision, Lucius saw Crathal emerging from Bleeding Haven's access hatch, his normally perfect posture now stiff with apparent injury. They both faced each other directly for the first time since the encounter in the maintenance bay, both battered.
"You took an unacceptable risk,"
Crathal said, his scale shifting colours too complex for Lucius to interpret it.
The Overlord could have killed you. Good thing it wasn't my first rodeo then.
Lucius grimaced, thinking of the simulated missions that had ended a piloting career before it began. Crathal studied Lucius for a long moment, then extended his hand in the human gesture of respect he must have learned during the diplomatic preparation.
Perhaps they did not send their champion,
he acknowledged, his eyes meeting Lucius's gaze directly.
But they sent the right pilot.
Lucius accepted the handshake, feeling the strange, rough texture of the Talshari skin against human, different, yet ultimately guided by the same core principles of duty and sacrifice.
Next time,
Lucius suggested with a painful smile,
let's skip the ancient defense system and just fight each other. Agreed,
Crathal replied, something like humour flickering across his alien features.
Though I must warn you, I will not extend my shield so readily in a true contest. And I'll try not to blow my mech up at you,
Lucius countered.
Probably.
Around them, station security and medical teams swarmed into the arena. The immediate danger passed, but the implications of what had occurred only beginning to unfold. 1 month later, Lucius stood in the familiar surrounding of Outpost 7's training hall, watching as recruits navigated a newly installed simulator program, one that incorporated lessons from the Talshari encounter.
Wells, you're doing it again,
Lucius called out. What would you do if the enemy adapted to your standard approach?
Create chaos, Sarge,
Wells replied promptly, adjusting his tactics to introduce unpredictable elements into the simulation.
Make them react to me instead of the other way around.
Lucius nodded in approval. The lessons from the exhibition had transformed not just Lucius's training approach, but the entire Earth Defense Force tactical doctrine. The diplomatic corps reported that the shared experience of confronting the ancient defense system had created an unexpected bond between the human and Talshari representatives, leading to trading terms far more favourable than anyone had anticipated. Major Ellington had recovered from the poisoning, which investigation had traced to a fringe group opposed to any alliance between the species. He had personally recommended Lucius for promotion and offered a position in the 1st Combat Division. Lucius had declined, requesting instead to remain at Outpost 7 with expanded resources to develop the training program. The front lines need good pilots, Lucius had to explain to a puzzled Juarez, but they need better training even more. The request had been granted, along with funding for updated simulators and the refurbishment of Old Bessie, now permanently retired from combat but serving as a hands-on training platform for the next generation of pilots. As the day's session concluded, a delivery drone arrived bearing a package with the Talshari diplomatic markings. Lucius dismissed the class before opening it privately. Inside was a small piece of Bleeding Haven's armour, forged into a medallion bearing the symbols of both Earth and the Talshari Dominion. A note accompanied it, written in Crathal's precisely formal standard English.
For the pilot who understands that defeat can teach more than victory, until our next match.
Lucius smiled, placing the medallion on Bessie's newly rebuilt cockpit where recruits would see it during their training. It would serve as a reminder that sometimes it was about finding unexpected paths forward. Later that day, Wells returned from leave with news from the disputed colonies.
They're saying it's because of you, Sarge,
he reported, his expression reflecting continuous optimism.
The trade agreement includes joint human Talshari protection from the research outposts. Human Talshari protection for the research outposts. My brother says they're actually working together. Engineers from both sides improving the colony's infrastructure.
Lucius brushed off the praise. It wasn't just me. It was circumstance, necessity, and maybe a little junkyard ingenuity.
Call it whatever you want,
Wells insisted.
But it worked. They're already talking about expanding the exchange program. Not just combat exhibitions, but technical cooperation, cultural programs, the works. Seems like the Talshari are finally loosening up a little.
As Lucius prepared the next day's training simulations, adding new Talshari mech designs working in tandem with human units against common threats, there was a quiet sense of accomplishment that went beyond personal vindication. The washout evaluation had been corrected in its assignments. Exceptional instinct, catastrophic risk assessment. But sometimes, Lucius reflected, sometimes the greatest victories come not from flawless execution of established protocols, but from the messy, desperate improvisation of junkyard dogs who refuse to accept the limitations others placed upon them.